In this video, I'm about to show you how Chicago business leaders have finally turned on Mayor Brandon Johnson after his new tax plan backfired in spectacular fashion. You know, I've been watching Chicago politics for over 40 years. I've seen mayors come and go, I've seen tax hikes and budget crises, but I have never seen business owners this angry. Never. They've had enough. The mayor thought he could squeeze a little more money out of the deep pockets downtown. He thought they would just grumble and pay up like they always do, but this time they fought back. And now the whole plan is falling apart. The mayor is isolated, the business leaders are furious, and regular people like you and me are left wondering if this city can ever get its act together. Let me break down exactly what happened, which companies are leading the revolt, and why your wallet is caught in the middle. Let me go back to the beginning so you understand what set this off. Last fall, Mayor Brandon Johnson proposed a new tax on commercial properties. Specifically, he wanted to raise the real estate transfer tax on properties sold for over $1 million. The official name was the Bring Chicago Home referendum. It sounded nice, right? Bring Chicago Home. Who could be against that? The idea was to use the money for affordable housing and services for the homeless. And on the surface, that sounds like something we can all support. Nobody wants people sleeping on the streets. Nobody wants families struggling to pay rent. But here's the problem. The tax wasn't just on luxury skyscrapers. It was on any commercial property sold for more than $1 million. That includes small office buildings, neighborhood retail centers, and even some large apartment buildings. According to the Cook County Clerk's Office, there are over 15,000 commercial properties in Chicago valued at over $1 million. 15,000. That's a lot of small business owners who would have been hit with a huge tax increase overnight. The tax rate under the plan was structured in tiers. Properties sold for less than $1 million would pay 0.75%. That's the same as before. But properties sold for between $1 million and $1.5 million would pay 2%, and properties sold for over $1.5 million would pay 3%. That doesn't sound like a lot, but on a $2 million building, that's $60,000 in taxes just for selling it. $60,000, that's more than many small business owners make in a year. The first sign that this plan was in trouble came from the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce. They're not usually a confrontational group. They work with whatever mayor is in office. They try to be diplomatic, but this time they came out swinging. In a statement that was published in Crane's Chicago Business, the Chamber's CEO, Jack Lavin, said the tax would devastate small businesses and accelerate the exodus of companies from Chicago. Those are strong words. Devastate, accelerate the exodus. The Chamber doesn't use language like that lightly. They know that every time a company leaves, they lose members. They lose influence, they lose tax revenue for the city, and they have the data to back it up. According to their own research, commercial property sales in Chicago had already dropped by over 20% in the previous 2 years because of uncertainty about taxes and crime. Adding a new tax on top of that would freeze the market completely. Why would anyone sell a building if they're going to get hit with a massive tax bill? They wouldn't. They would hold on to it, or they would let it sit empty. And empty buildings don't generate property tax revenue. They don't generate economic activity. They become blight. So the Chamber's argument was that the tax would actually reduce tax revenue, not increase it. The mayor's office called that corporate propaganda, but the numbers don't lie. When you tax something, you get less of it. That's basic economics, and the Chamber knew it. Next up were the real estate groups. These are the people who actually buy and sell commercial property. They know the market better than anyone, and they were united in their opposition to the plan. The Building Owners and Managers Association, the Illinois Realtors Association, and the Commercial Real Estate Alliance all came out against it. That almost never happens. Usually, these groups compete with each other, but on this issue, they were on the same page. Their argument was simple. Chicago already has the highest commercial property tax rate in the Midwest. According to a study by the Altus Group, the effective property tax rate on commercial buildings in Chicago is over 2.5% of market value. In Indianapolis, it's 1.8%. In Columbus, Ohio, it's 1.7%. In Nashville, it's 1.6%. So Chicago is already nearly a full percentage point higher than its competitors. Adding another layer of taxes on top of that would make Chicago completely uncompetitive. One real estate developer, a man named Michael Reschke, said in an interview that he was shocked by the mayor's proposal. He said he had never seen a city try to tax its way out of a problem like this. Reschke has developed billions of dollars worth of property in Chicago. He knows what he's talking about, and he said that the tax would cause a mass exodus of investment from the city. That's a developer saying that people won't build here anymore. That's huge. This is where things got really interesting. The big business groups and the real estate developers, you expect them to fight a tax increase. But when the small business owners started speaking out, that's when the mayor should have known he was in trouble. Letters started pouring into City Hall, emails, phone calls. Small business owners from every ward in the city said the same thing. This tax will put me out of business. I talked to a retired restaurant owner named Tony. He ran an Italian place on the northwest side for 30 years. He sold his building a few years ago and retired. But his son still runs a pizza shop in the same neighborhood. Tony told me if this tax had been in place when I sold, I would have lost $50,000. That was my retirement. I would have had to work another 5 years. Tony's son is thinking of selling the pizza shop next year. He's worried that the tax will eat up all his equity, so he's putting his plans on hold. That's the hidden cost of these taxes. It's not just the money that the city collects, it's the economic activity that never happens because people are scared. A study by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that transfer taxes like this one reduce property sales by about 15%. That means fewer transactions, fewer real estate agents getting paid, fewer lawyers getting hired, fewer movers, fewer contractors. The ripple effects are enormous. While all this was going on, the suburbs were watching, and they saw an opportunity. The mayor's tax plan made Chicago more expensive. So the suburbs started running ads and sending mailers to Chicago business owners, saying, "Come to the suburbs. We have lower taxes. We have safer streets. We have parking lots." I saw one ad from the village of Rosemont that literally said, "Keep your money, move to Rosemont." That's a direct shot at the mayor. According to the Lake County Partners Economic Development Group, over 100 businesses moved from Chicago to the suburbs in the first half of last year alone. That's double the number from the same period the year before, and many of them cited the proposed transfer tax as a reason. They were worried that if they stayed in Chicago, more taxes would follow. So they left before the tax even passed. One of those businesses was a small manufacturing company called ABC Metal Works. They had been in Chicago for 50 years, but their building was old, and they wanted to sell it and move to a newer facility. Under the mayor's tax plan, they would have paid over $40,000 just to sell their old building. So instead, they sold to a developer who plans to turn the building into condos, and they moved to a suburb called Franklin Park. Franklin Park gave them a tax break for 10 years. Chicago gave them a tax bill. It wasn't a hard choice. The mayor said that businesses like ABC Metal Works were abandoning the city, but they weren't abandoning anything. They were responding to incentives. If you make it expensive to sell a building in Chicago, people will sell their building somewhere else. That's not disloyalty, that's common sense. Now let me tell you about some of the big brands that publicly oppose the tax. These are companies, McDonald's, their headquarters is in the West Loop. They employ over 2,000 people in Chicago, and they came out against the tax, not loudly, not with a press conference, but they had their lobbyists make calls, they had their lawyers write letters, and they made it clear that if the tax passed, they would reconsider their investment in the city. McDonald's has options. They already have a huge campus in Romeoville, a suburb southwest of Chicago. They could move more jobs there. They could move jobs to their other offices in Florida and Texas. They didn't say that publicly, but everyone in City Hall knew it, and it scared them. Because if McDonald's leaves, that's a disaster. Not just the jobs, not just the tax revenue, but the message it sends. If McDonald's won't stay in Chicago, who will? Another brand that stood up was United Airlines. They're based in the Willis Tower, the building that used to be called the Sears Tower. United employs over 15,000 people in the Chicago area, and they have a lot of political clout. Their CEO, Scott Kirby, is not shy about speaking his mind. In a private meeting with the mayor, according to sources who spoke to the Sun-Times, Kirby said that the tax would be another reason for companies to leave Illinois. He didn't threaten to leave, but he didn't have to. The implication was clear. United has already been shifting jobs to Denver and Houston. They have major hubs in both cities. If Chicago becomes too expensive, they can shift more. That's the reality of the modern economy. Companies are mobile, they go where they're treated best, and Chicago, under Brandon Johnson, is not treating them well. Despite all the opposition, the mayor pushed ahead. He got the referendum on the ballot in the March primary. He campaigned hard for it. He held rallies. He brought in celebrities. He said that voting yes was a vote for compassion and housing justice, and for a while it looked like it might pass. The polls showed it was close. But then something happened. The business groups started spending money on ads. They ran commercials on TV and radio. They sent mailers to every household in the city. And their message was simple. This tax will hurt you, not help you. They pointed out that the money wasn't guaranteed to go to affordable housing. The city council could reallocate it at any time. They pointed out that the tax would make it harder for regular people to sell their homes. They pointed out that other cities that tried similar taxes had seen their economy slow down. On election night, the results came in. The referendum lost. 53% voted no, 47% voted yes. It wasn't even close. The mayor was stunned. He had put his political capital on the line. He had promised his progressive base that this was the first step in a larger plan to tax the rich, and he lost. The business leaders had turned the tide. The mayor's statement after the loss was defensive. He said the real estate industry spent millions of dollars to confuse voters. He blamed misinformation. He didn't congratulate the opposition. He didn't accept responsibility. He just blamed everyone else. That's not leadership. That's a tantrum. And the business leaders who had fought him weren't interested in hearing it. After the referendum failed, you might think the business leaders would go back to their offices and be happy. But they didn't. They turned the screws. They started demanding that the mayor change his entire approach to taxation and business regulation. They sent a letter to City Hall signed by over 200 business owners and executives. The letter said, in part, the defeat of the transfer tax should be a wake-up call. Chicago needs to lower taxes, not raise them. We need to reduce crime, not make excuses for it. We need to streamline permitting and licensing, not add more layers of bureaucracy. The mayor's office called the letter disappointing and said that the business community was out of touch with the needs of working families. That's the same language he used during the campaign. It didn't work then, and it's not working now. The business community is not going away. They're organized, they're funded, and they're angry. One of the signatories of the letter was the owner of a chain of hardware stores named Jim. He has 5 locations on the south and west sides. He told me, "I've been in Chicago my whole life. I want this city to succeed, but the mayor is making it impossible. Every year, my property taxes go up. Every year, my insurance goes up because of crime. Every year, I have to fill out more forms. I can't take it anymore." Jim said he's thinking of moving his stores to Indiana. He doesn't want to, but he might have to. Now let me tell you about some brands that are still fighting for Chicago. They haven't given up. One of them is Portillo's. I mentioned them before. They're based in Oak Brook, but their heart is in Chicago. Their CEO, Michael Osanloo, gave a speech after the referendum where he said, "We are not leaving. We are doubling down. Chicago made us who we are." I almost stood up and cheered when I read that. It's rare to hear a CEO say something positive about this city. Portillo's has opened 3 new locations in Chicago in the last 2 years. They're hiring. They're investing. They're putting their money where their mouth is. Osanloo said that the key to their success is their employees. They pay well above minimum wage. They offer benefits. They treat people with respect. And in return, their employees show up and work hard. It's not complicated, but it's rare. Another brand that's staying is Jewel Osco. They've been in Chicago since 1899. That's 125 years. They've seen depressions, wars, riots, and pandemics. And they're still here. Their parent company, Albertsons, has been struggling nationally, but the Chicago division is profitable. Why? Because they've adapted, they've added more delivery options, they've improved their store brands, they've focused on customer service. You would think after losing the referendum, the mayor would change course. You would think he would reach out to the business community and try to find common ground. But that's not what happened. Instead, he doubled down. In his latest budget proposal, he's calling for a new tax on large businesses. He wants to raise the city's portion of the sales tax by 0.25 percentage points. That doesn't sound like much, but on a $50,000 car, that's $125. On a family's monthly grocery bill, it adds up. The mayor says the new tax is necessary to fund the city's pension obligations and to hire more police officers. I actually support hiring more police. I want to feel safe when I walk to my car. But raising taxes to do it is the wrong approach. It punishes the businesses that are still here, it makes Chicago even less competitive, and it doesn't guarantee that the money will be spent wisely. The Illinois Policy Institute analyzed the mayor's budget and found that the city's spending has increased by over 20% since he took office. 20%. That's far more than inflation. So the problem isn't that the city doesn't have enough money. The problem is that the city spends too much. The mayor keeps adding programs, adding staff, adding layers of bureaucracy, and then he says he needs more. Let me bring this home for you. How does all this affect you, the retired person on a fixed income? Every time the mayor proposes a new tax, businesses have to decide whether to absorb it or pass it on to customers. Most of them pass it on. So when the sales tax goes up, you pay more for everything. When the transfer tax makes it harder to sell buildings, developers stop building, which means fewer apartments, which means higher rents. Every tax increase eventually lands on your doorstep. The Civic Federation, a nonpartisan budget watchdog, calculated that the average Chicago household already pays over $10,000 a year in state and local taxes. $10,000. That's more than many people pay for housing, and the mayor wants to add to that. He says it's for affordable housing. But if you're already struggling to afford your own housing, his plan just makes it worse. I talked to a retired teacher named Margaret. She lives in a condo on the north side. Her property taxes have gone up by $3,000 in the last 2 years. $3,000. That's a month's worth of Social Security for her. She said, I don't know how much longer I can stay here. I love my condo. I love my neighbors, but I can't afford it anymore. Margaret is thinking about moving to Wisconsin where property taxes are lower, and that's a tragedy. We're losing people like Margaret. People who built this city. People who taught our kids. And the mayor doesn't seem to care. Here's where we are today. Mayor Brandon Johnson is isolated. His progressive allies still support him, but the moderates and the business community have turned against him. He lost the transfer tax referendum badly. His approval ratings have dropped below 40%, according to a poll from Victory Research, and his new tax proposals are facing fierce opposition. The business leaders, on the other hand, are more united than they've been in decades. They've realized that if they don't stick together, they'll be picked off one by one. They're speaking with one voice, they're spending money on campaigns, they're showing up at city council meetings, and they're not backing down. I'm not a political genius. I'm just a retired guy who pays attention. But I know that when business leaders and the mayor are at war, nobody wins. The businesses lose because they have to spend time and money fighting instead of growing. The mayor loses because he can't get his agenda passed. And we lose because we get higher taxes, fewer services, and a city that feels like it's falling apart.